All right, so we're going to be talking about a group today that maybe you know, maybe you don't know, but we're going to call them the never attenders. Kind of break that down. So, welcome to today's episode of Rainer on Leadership. Dad, um, this is kind of your thing a little bit. So, explain to me, if you are a never attender, who is that?
It's people who never attend church.
Well, I didn't know. Sometimes these things have cutesy names, and it is what it sounds like. The never
Ryan
attenders.
Burge, for whom we get a lot of our research data from, he makes things pretty plain, and I mean he communicates well because he's dealing with data. We're going to call this group. No, they're just the never attenders.
Well, I mean, he's a solid Midwestern dude, right? So, I mean, plain. That's just matter of fact. Here's exactly what it is.
You know what he
That's
calls
who he
those who
is.
are parts of non-denominational churches?
The nuns.
The
What?
nuns, not
The
the
nuns.
nuns,
Yeah,
but the nuns.
yeah. He's got the nuns and the nuns.
Yes.
Which, by the way, his stuff really is good. I do encourage you to check out Ryan Burge's stuff. We learn. Where do we learn? That's one place where we learn.
Yeah.
He's always giving good factual data.
I get I think a full newsletter from him once a week. Is that right? I know I pay a small price for it, but it's what I get.
Yeah, I subscribe to his Substack too. It's about once a week where you get something.
Yep. Good stuff. Good stuff. All right. We're going to talk about the never attenders. Hey, before we talk about the never attenders, I want you to talk about California Baptist.
Yes, it's a university that I love to discuss because, frankly, it's one of the best that's out there. It's in beautiful Riverside, California, and they've got a really unique program that we've been talking about for quite some time. It's been quite popular for them, and part of the reason is because, hey, the first class is free. So if you're an eligible high school student, obviously, Dad, I don't know how many eligible high school students listen to this show.
Well, the idea is for the pastors to tell them and the church leaders to tell them.
Pastors and parents, right? Yeah. So if you have those high schoolers in your sphere, they need to know about this. So you get credit while you're doing your high school work. You get college credit while you're doing your high school work through these classes. And the first class is free, so it's one of those things. Hey, try it. There's really no risk. You just get the book. You have to buy the books and the course materials. That's it. But if it's something that really clicks with you, and I believe that it will, they offer a huge discount per credit hour for those who do this. So typically the cost per credit hour is $613, but they reduce it to $166. So, I mean, you really get a head start on college is what you get with this.
First one's free, and
There's
then $160 per credit hour. Incredible.
huge head start. Obviously, the consideration is that you'll carry this to California Baptist University, and really, that's a school you should certainly consider. But depending on the university, it could be used at other places as well. 30 available courses, so the variety is there. 30 available courses. Really, if you homeschool, you can do this, private or public school. It's available to just about anyone. So go to calbaptist.edu/PCC, calbaptist.edu/PCC. Neat organization. And while you're at it, check out California Baptist as well. I've been on their campus and seen all of their facilities. It's just a solid program. It's a great all-around school. I don't think you'll regret looking into it.
With a Christian worldview, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. They do that well.
All right, let's talk about the never attenders, Sam.
Yeah, so let's do some comparisons here, and I hope this works over radio. And if you're watching on YouTube, hello, I can see you. Actually, I can't see you. That's weird. You can see me. But most of our listeners, we have several hundred who tune in via YouTube. We do appreciate that, but there are tens of thousands that tune in via the radio. So, I hope this comes across. I hope these stats come across. So 2008, let's go all the way back to 2008, Great Recession. This was obviously about 15 years ago at this point.
Wow.
I know. There you go. 15 years ago. How does that make you
Hey,
feel, Dad?
yeah, parenthetical comment about the wow. Your mom showed me an ad for a new community that's developing that is a over 55 community. And we both
You're qualified.
decided well, we both decided they were too young for us. And
That's
so we
good.
just moved on. Back to you,
That
Sam. Back to you.
that's you, Gen Xers, by the way. That's you. Um, but yeah, because Gen X doesn't typically get a shout out, but we'll do that. You can
There
get
you
into
go.
the retirement communities
You
now.
may be the smallest, most insignificant generation. I shouldn't say that. But anyway, we're giving you a shout out.
They are the smallest, definitely not the most insignificant. By the way, shout out to the Gen Xers in my church. We did a whole episode on Gen X and why we like working with Gen X at EST. It was a while back, so you'd have to dig around to find it in the archive. But it was a really, really good episode. Some of our best church members are Gen Xers, so I will give
Good.
them a small generation, yes, but powerful. They carry a punch. All right, 2008. Back to this data. 20% of all respondents in this survey reported never attending religious services. But by 2022, that had gone up to 34%. So we've seen a 14% rise in the never attenders. And currently, that accounts for about 45 million Americans. So this is a very large group and a growing group of people who are would you say unchurched? It's not just unchurched, but it's people who never attend. Period.
It I don't know of a better way to say it. It's severe unchurched because there are unchurched people that come to Easter. There are unchurched people that may come on Christmas, but these are never attenders. And just so the audience can understand this, the sample size represented the U.S. population. So when we say 20% of all respondents, we're saying this represents 20% of the U.S. population. Or if we're saying 34% of all respondents, that means it represents 34% of the U.S. population. And the number that Sam gave is the most significant. From 2008 to 2022, there are 45 million who are new, not total, but who are new to this category. It is a sadly fast growing category of religious connections or lack of connections.
Yeah, and this is something that is culturally new as well, because there has, even if you were unchurched, you would typically, historically, we're talking 30, 40, 50 years ago, during the time of cultural Christianity, you would still come to the big events. You'd come to Christmas, you'd come to Easter, if you're a small town, the children's production, all that stuff. But now there is this growing group that just never goes. And I would say that is something that is more unique in the last 100 years or so to
Mm-hmm.
U.S. culture.
And if you were a never attender, the likelihood is you would probably give yourself a halo effect in a survey. And what I mean by that is you may lie. You may say, "Oh yeah, I go to church every now and then," and maybe it was your christening when you were born or something like that. But you really don't. It doesn't matter now. People are happy to say, "I don't go to church." They're not ashamed of it. I never attend church.
That's true. I mean, in the past, you might have attended Easter 3 years ago. So you would say, I go to a church on occasion, right? Even though you've been once in the last 3 years. But people are more readily admitting that they don't attend church. And that, too, is a cultural shift as well. So this is a growing group. It's a much larger group. It's a newer group. And it's a group that really doesn't feel much shame associated with church attendance. I meet people like this all the time in my community. The Bradenton area is growing rapidly. And we're definitely in a more urban area. We're not like New York City or LA or anything like that, but we definitely are an area where I like to call Southwest Florida the wasteland of churches. And it's we have fewer churches per capita than Miami. Most people don't quite realize that, but this is an area where I'd say the never attenders are pretty strong. And so the opportunities for the gospel are huge. So I like to look at it as opportunity, Dad. Yes, there are a lot of people that are just happy not to associate with the church, but also have to say that that means there's more of a chance for the gospel to
And
really
what
really
we will
shine.
do is when we get to the podcast following this one, and I would ask for the listener or viewer to hold on to next week as well, we're going to talk about reaching this group. We're describing them now. We're talking about who are the never attenders. We're going to say, how do we reach them? And they are not unreachable. So we'll begin with that premise, but then save the rest of it for next week. Now, typically, Sam, in the past, you could predict a never attender based upon some profiles. A never attender was political and was typically a Democrat. Never attender was young adult. You and I did a book many years ago, many years ago, called Essential Church, where we looked at that never attending college age group as part of our research. And so that could have been a predictor. That's not the case today. Who, Sam, are the never attenders today?
Well, they're everyone and they're everywhere. It's not like there's a demographic subset that this applies to. They come from almost every demographic group, and they look like the demographic composition of America. So you can't even peg this to a political identity, which in the past had there's a little more common to be able to do that. That relationship is breaking down. This is somebody who this is just as likely to be somebody who says they're conservative as they are progressive, politically. So it's just it's something where they represent everybody. Which again, these are your neighbors.
Exactly.
These are your so I don't want us to miss that. These aren't these aren't the scary, dingy people that are crawling around in the alleyways. This is the person across the street from you.
Hey,
And
and before we go further, Sam, we talked about this in a previous podcast. Tell them about the resource. I know that it's your brainchild, but tell them about the simple resource just to reach these people. I know we're going to do more in the next episode, so I'm getting ahead of myself. But tell them about the Good News Neighbor resource.
yeah, we'll put a link in the show notes, but it's called Good News Neighbors. And basically what it teaches you is, and the church is a way to utilize gifts, fun, and memorable gifts to be a catalyst to invite people to church. And it's a way that just about anybody can reach out to their neighbors in a very non-intrusive way, in a non-threatening way, and just have a little fun, and invite somebody to church. So it's a great first step. And honestly, I think the Good News Neighbors is a great resource for the never attenders. This is a good way to start building that bridge. And Dad, I mean, this is where we've almost come full circle. We had these. You and I both. You have a PhD in evangelism. I studied missiology, and there's this long history of research that kind of talks about how to reach the culture. We've almost come full circle back to like Donald McGavran and Bridges of God.
Exactly.
Where
1955, my birth year.
And Roland Allen in some different places, a lot of the principles of how to grow your church from the 1980s and the 1990s, those things just don't work anymore because cultural Christianity is dead. You got to reach people with they have zero knowledge of the Bible, zero knowledge of church culture. They don't go to church. They don't even know what the inside of a church looks like. They hardly notice the outside of the church because they drive by and it's invisible to them. We're kind of back to that early missiological movement where it's like, hey, we got to build bridges to people. It's like, yeah, we do. We do
And
now.
by the way, Donald McGavran wrote his book Bridges of God in 1955 from his experience in India. It was
right. That's what I was getting at. This is not 1955 America. This is 1955 India.
Yep.
Yeah, a lot of our listeners may not know that. But by the way, excellent book. If you really want to read something rich, I know it's very dated at this point, but still, it's a fascinating read.
It's fascinating, but I need to offer the disclaimer: he's not the most fluid writer.
No, he's not. But still worth having on your shelf.
Absolutely. All right. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about the never attenders in terms of how to reach them. We gave you a little bit of clue last time, or this time. We're talking about the Good News Neighbor. I can also mention another that we talk about a lot, and that's the Hope Initiative. And I got one little story I want to tell you about the Hope Initiative, Sam. And again, it's somewhat related to this topic, but I never let the topic bother me in my conversation and how what I will say or sing. So, as you know, not too long ago, your mom and I were in Puerto Rico, and I'm going through the Hope Initiative myself. I'm going through it for the second time. And this particular day, it said, pray for an opportunity to share the gospel. So don't worry about pushing it. Just pray for an opportunity to share the gospel. That was my challenge of one of the 30 days. So I prayed. And pastor of the church in Puerto Rico and his wife took Nellie Jo, your mother, and me into San Juan, beautiful area to just kind of walk around and tour. And I'm thinking, all right, I'm literally thinking this. I prayed, Hope Initiative challenged me, and I
Do you
prayed for an
literally
opportunity.
think, or do you figuratively think?
I was literally thinking. It's not figurative. It was something that was happening. I'm not giving you a facade of a story. I'm giving you the
What is
literal.
figurative thinking? Can you
It just
figuratively
it just
think?
it Well, if you're getting me astray, and I'm already astray, but I will just tell you, figuratively thinking would mean they weren't the actual thoughts going through your mind. It's just you're just saying this is the general state I was in. Literal thinking, these thoughts are going in my mind. So back to my story. So I'm wondering how I'm going to share the gospel. And your mom was looking at paintings in a store with the pastor's wife, and the pastor and I were kind of out on the streets, just standing there because we knew we just had to wait patiently. And a group of, I want to say, 7, 8 teenage girls came up to me. Um, they obviously could see that I was a likely tourist. And so the first girl that came up to me said, I speak English. I'm going to translate for the rest of my friends. Um, are you a tourist? I said, yeah, that's kind of pretty obvious. Uh, where are you from? United States. Okay. Of course, Puerto Rico is a commonwealth of the United States, but they meant the
Territory.
contiguous 48 territory. So she came up to me and she said, we are here in El San Juan doing a research project, and we've been asked to go around and interview tourists and ask them why they came to Puerto Rico. They said, that's going to be our first question to you. Why did you come to Puerto Rico? And I said, oh, I came to share Jesus. And let me tell you what that means. And so they asked if they could record it, video it. I said, sure. And so they're videoing me, and I told them what it means to share Jesus. I went through the gospel. I said everything I wanted to say because that's essentially what they asked me to do. And so when I finished, I looked, their eyes were wide, their mouths were agape, and they were slowly walking backwards, like, we've got to leave this weirdo. I'm trusting that the Holy Spirit did something because I scared them to death. And all I did was give them the truths of Scripture. So that is an example of how
Maybe you
you
put the fear of God in them. Maybe that's what you did.
it. And the pastor said, "I've never seen this happen before." Anyway, I go astray. We'll talk more about this whole idea of the never attenders. We'll talk in the next episode about reaching them. I do want to mention before we close it out that we have a very good friend at Church Growth Services. I'm so grateful for them and for their generosity, their stewardship, and their emphases in those areas. If you really, really are serious about increasing generosity in your church, increasing giving in your church, whether it's for the general fund or for the building fund or some other capital fund, we recommend that you contact our folks at Church Growth Services. I'll put a link there, churchgrowthservices.com. Love them. And
By the
they've
way,
been
they've got a
partnering with us.
really good ebook. You should check that out. The
Okay.
5 generosity megatrends. That's a really good resource. We'll put that link in the show notes too.
Well, that's a good link, especially when we're talking about trends in the church right now. So it'll complement it. So thank you as always for being a part of Rainer on Leadership. And remember, next episode next week, we'll be talking about reaching the never attenders. We'll see you then.